Hey everyone, I'm Mariana, and Game of Thrones is finally back. Season 7 premiered last night, which means episode recaps are back on my channel. As always, this is a spoiler discussion, so make sure you've seen the episode before watching this video, and let's talk about the season premiere, Dragonstone. Overall, I thought this was a strong way to start the season. They've managed to check in with a lot of the characters, not everybody, but a lot of them, reminding everybody what they're up to and what their intentions are. It wasn't a super action-packed episode or anything like that, but it really didn't need to be. It was just really nice to dive right back into all of the politics and see all of the different locations. Basically, it feels good to be back in Westeros. And the episode started with a great cold open. We see Walder Frey hosting another feast, and you can just tell something is off, especially when he starts talking about the Red Wedding, and the actor did a wonderful job, by the way. That's because this is actually Arya wearing Walder Frey's face. She is poisoning all of the Freys. She's officially a mass murderer now, and she basically wants to send the message that the North remembers and winter came for House Frey. That was such a great way to open the episode, and I was not expecting a cold open, but I love that they did that, and it really demonstrates how dangerous she can be. Later, we see Arya riding through the forest where she finds Ed Sheeran, of all people, among the Lannister soldiers. What we find out in this scene is that Arya is actually headed to King's Landing, and she obviously wants to kill the Queen. Everybody laughs at that, but she actually does want to kill the Queen. I was under the impression that she was going home, as in Winterfell, because that's what she told Sexy Jesus when she was leaving the House of Black and White, but apparently she's headed to King's Landing. However, the soldiers don't really have a lot of good things to say about King's Landing, and they talk about how they miss home and how they wish they didn't leave and they want to be with their families. So maybe that will change her mind and she will actually go to Winterfell instead. I hope so. On the other hand, I feel like this could play into the Valonqar prophecy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there is a prophecy in the book that Cersei is given by Maggie the Frog that she will be killed by the Valonqar, which in High Valyrian means little brother. So it could be that Arya goes to kill Cersei and impersonates Tyrion, for example, or even Jaime, because technically he is the younger twin. We'll see how this goes. I do hope she goes to Winterfell instead, though. Going back to the beginning of the episode, the first thing we see after the titles is this dark storm, and we see White Walkers advancing. More and more are coming, and it is so menacing and so epic, and they have some giants with them. Ice zombie giants are just extra terrifying, and I'm also wondering if Hodor is somewhere in there as well. Obviously, he's not a giant, but we all know what happened to Hodor, and he was just kind of left there. So I feel like it's safe to assume he's going to come back as one of the members of the Army of the Dead. We also see Meera and Bran arrive at the gates of Castle Black, and they do end up crossing over south of the wall. This makes me wonder if Bran crossing over actually broke the magic of the wall. If you don't know, the wall is not just a physical barrier from the White Walkers, it's actually also a magic barrier because they had all these spells go into it. And if you remember back when, once again, Hodor died, the issue there was that Bran was touched by a White Walker, and that's why they were able to get into the place where they were hiding. So I'm wondering if the same thing applies to the wall, because if it does, they're screwed. At Winterfell, Jon is telling people they need to find as much dragon glass as they can, and he sends Tormund and the wildlings to Man Eastwatch by the Sea because he thinks that's where the White Walkers are going to arrive. We also see little Lady Mormont be a badass just like she was last season. She's just adorable. I love watching her. We also see Sansa and Jon disagree on what to do with the Umbers and the Karstarks and their castles because they're technically traitors. traitors. And Littlefinger is grinning at this disagreement because this is exactly what he wants. He wants Sansa on his side, and he wants her to go against Jon because he wants her to be in charge of the North. Jon does end up standing his ground, and he wants the castles to stay with the families, making the heirs pledge loyalty to House Stark once again. But, you know, there are some tensions between Jon and Sansa, and later on we actually see them have a little bit of a heart-to-heart about this, because he doesn't want her questioning him in front of a room full of people, which is understandable, and Sansa sees this as him not being willing to listen and being stubborn. She thinks he is a good military man, but he doesn't really see the politics the way she sees the politics. And then on top of this, a raven arrives from King's Landing, and Cersei wants him to bend the knee, and of course he dismisses this because he doesn't see Cersei as big of a threat as the White Walkers at the moment, because they're kind of a bigger problem. But Sansa thinks that he should not dismiss Cersei. Basically, the tensions continue. Personally, I don't think either of them is wrong, but they definitely need to be on the same page about everything. I don't think she needs to question him in front of other people because it just makes the leadership look questionable, but he needs to listen to the political side of things as well, because Cersei is kind of crazy, and she's definitely not just going to leave the North alone. After Jon leaves, we see Baelish show up to talk to Sansa, but Brienne comes up, which interrupts the conversation. Clearly, Baelish has an agenda. When does he not have an agenda? But, you know, Brienne is there to protect Sansa, and she does not like Baelish one bit, which, by the way, we do see Brienne and Tormund interact for a second when Brienne is training Pod, and it is just so cute. Those two are perfect for each other, and they don't even know it. Well, Tormund knows it, but Brienne doesn't. Meanwhile, somewhere in the north, the Hound, Thoros, Beric, and a few other men stumble upon that house that Arya and the Hound visited back when they were traveling together, and turns out the man and his daughter are still there in a way. The Hound is really not on board with the entire Lord of Light thing. He thinks it's kind of all bullshit, but they are trying to convince him otherwise, and he does end up looking into the flames and seeing something that he did not expect to see, but he clearly still does not like religion and all of that, and he thinks all of these people are crazy fanatics. It is interesting though that after looking into the flames, he sees the wall and the army of the dead, and it definitely shocks him a little bit, but I doubt the Hound will be joining the ranks of the worshippers of the Lord of Light anytime soon, but at least he has a reason to believe that there's something out there. Later, Thoros finds him burying the dead in the middle of the night, which further humanizes the Hound as a character. He has definitely come a long way since season 1, because now we see him actually feel responsible for the death of these people. He doesn't want them to just be left out there, which I don't think the Hound from season 1 would have cared about these people at all or given them a second thought, even if he was responsible for their death. And also, this is a nice wink to the Gravedigger from the books. At King's Landing, Cersei is walking all over a freshly painted map. Am I the only person who was bothered by it? I just felt like she was ruining the paint. The entire scene, it just was in the back of my mind. I don't know why. Anyways, she's clearly focused on how many enemies she has, and she wants to crush them all, obviously. I am still not a fan of what the show has done to Jaime's character. He is way moved on in the books. He's over Cersei. He is on his own path. He's the new person. And here he just kind of is this useless puppet with no real motivation other than being with Cersei. And I'm just not a fan of this change. I do hope that something happens within the next few episodes that just makes him say enough and leave and go his own way, but at the same time that wouldn't really be a great thing for Cersei at all, because he is all she has left. She doesn't have any kids left at this point, which is horrible, but he is essentially what she has other than her power. Basically, what's going on here is that they are in desperate need of allies, both from the perspective of the characters, because they are in the situation where they're surrounded by enemies, but also from the perspective of just the story, because at the moment they are not a very powerful force. Yes, she is theoretically the queen of the Seven Kingdoms, but realistically, nobody likes these people, and Daenerys has dragons, so there's no way she's winning this unless she can somehow boost her forces, which is obviously necessary because otherwise we just have an OP person who is going to just demolish the supposed queen of the Seven Kingdoms. It's not much of a conflict. And this is where the Greyjoy fleet comes in. We see the ships arrive and we see Euron Greyjoy in this episode. Once again, not the biggest fan of the changes to his character. I thought he was a little bit too cartoonish, especially in this episode. He was almost channeling Captain Jack Sparrow at some point, at least that's what it seemed like to me. Euron in the books seems way more intelligent. He definitely changes the way he acts depending on who he's talking to. And here he was just being a typical sleazy villain, which I feel like is a trope that Game of Thrones has been using a lot with their villains. I just want a nice, imposing, charismatic villain for once, and I feel like Euron could have been that villain, but I guess no. He kind of proposes to Cersei, which she declines, and he says he will return with a priceless gift. What could that gift be? Probably something related to politics and revenge, maybe something to do with the Sand Snakes, but wouldn't it be awesome if the gift was the Dragon Binder? If you haven't read the books, you have no idea what I'm talking about. In the books, there are all these magical horns, and one of them is called the Dragon Binder. This is actually how Euron Greyjoy wins the Kingsmoot in the books, because he shows up with this horn and he basically says we're going to conquer everything because the dragons must obey the owner of the horn. There is kind of a complicated thing there, because if you blow the horn you die, but the dragons will hear and obey the master of the horn, so he has another person blow the horn and they start bleeding immediately. Anyways, in my mind, it would be really cool if they actually brought the Dragon Binder into the show, and that would definitely balance the powers between Daenerys and her dragons and Cersei and Euron, because that way there would be a legitimate threat to Daenerys' power, and then the conflict would get interesting. We also get to see what's going on at the Citadel, where Sam doesn't have the most glamorous maester training. I don't know why we needed to see the whole shit and soup analogy over and over again. There was a whole montage of that. I can figure out what's going on with those bedpans without the actual visual, and it was just really gross in my opinion. I could have done without that. But basically, as Sam is going about his training, he really wants to get into the restricted section, but he can't until he's a maester, and he asks the archmaester for permission, gets denied, and then he decides to steal the keys and just borrow some books for himself. And we later see him and Gilly reading in the middle of the night, and that's when Sam finds out where a lot of the dragon glass is. This is obviously something Jon needs, so he decides to send a raven to Jon. Hopefully that raven is going to get there. We also find out that Jorah is at the Citadel, and judging by his arm, he's not doing so well. I'm assuming Sam or someone at that place is going to make Jorah better, because otherwise there really is no point of having these characters converge in one location, and there is no point in bringing Jorah up right now as he's training. So I'm thinking Jorah is going to be, if not okay, then at least better. And finally, Daenerys arrives at Dragonstone, which is probably the best part of the episode. My three favorite parts of the episode were obviously the cold open, Daenerys arriving at Dragonstone, and the whole thing with the White Walkers advancing. Those were the three most epic things about this episode. But back to Daenerys arriving at Dragonstone, everything just looked so good in this scene. The location looks great, the castle looks great, Daenerys looks great, the throne room looks great, everything was just so well done, and there isn't really much dialogue in this scene either, which I thought was a really good choice. We just got to take all of it in along with Daenerys as she was taking those first steps, being back on Westeros, and she was walking into Dragonstone. It was clearly an emotional moment for her, and the only line of dialogue we hear in that entire scene is her saying, "Shall we begin?" at the very end. Even though I can't say that Daenerys was ever my most favorite character, I've always liked her, but she was never my #1 character. It's still so good to see her after all of these seasons of her wandering around and having to convince everybody that she is important. Seeing her finally get back to Westeros and land at Dragonstone was just so satisfying, and it really feels like her conquest is about to begin. Well, she has been conquering people for a while now, but this is the goal for her. I really hope she's actually going to get to do a lot of things this season, because we have seen Daenerys kind of get stuck in the politics of things for a really long time, and I don't think they have the time for her to be passive, so I'm feeling that maybe one episode, maybe 2 episodes are going to be dedicated to her preparing, but after that she's just going to go for it and we will see a lot of shit go down, and that makes me very excited. So that's it for this episode recap and review. Let's talk about all of it in the comments below. Let me know what you're looking forward to, what were your favorite things about the episode, what were your not so favorite things about the episode if you had any, and let me know what would you like to see in season 7. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching as always, and if you enjoyed it, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye!